Fiona Green, the illegitimate child of Count Green, had a miserable childhood but showed exceptional magical talent, eventually becoming a renowned mage. At first glance, she seems like a typical heroine, but Fiona can never be the heroine. At the Green family's dining table, Count Green scolds Fiona for daydreaming, and her half-brother Caindel insults her, calling her a low-born wretch. Though irritated, Fiona remains silent, knowing she must endure their cruelty as an unwanted illegitimate daughter. However, the current Fiona is not the original. She is someone who has become Fiona Green. Though her family sees her as a nuisance now, she's destined to be a genius mage praised by all. But this isn't good news because Fiona isn't the story's heroine, but its final boss. In the novel The Emperor and the Saint, the Emperor and a saint fall in love and save the world. Fiona, the villainess, is mercilessly punished. Near the novel's end, as she nears immortality and becomes a threat to the couple, the hero kills her, decapitates her, pulls out her still-beating heart, pierces it with his sword, hangs her head on the castle walls, burns her body, and casts her soul into eternal darkness. This horrifying fate is Fiona's future. If she dies now, perhaps she could avoid it, but she cuts off that thought, knowing she'll be punished again for not paying attention. Count Green informs his children that the situation on the warfront is dire and that His Majesty has ordered the Green family to dispatch a mage to the northern front lines. A heavy silence follows. Fiona, aware that the original story begins in 6 years, reflects that the Empire is currently weakened by battles with demonic monsters, circumstances the author created to pave the way for the hero and heroine to save the world from the evil dragon and monsters. But this is the reality she must face now. Count Green continues, stating that one of them must go to the northern front. His second son, Zen, and his oldest daughter express shock at the idea of being sent to war. Fiona internally notes that House Green is renowned as a mage family, so it makes sense that the Emperor would request a mage from them. The real question is, who will be sent? Count Green asks if anyone will volunteer for this honorable duty. At that moment, Caindel jabs Fiona painfully with his elbow and cruelly suggests that a vermin like her should go. Holding her throbbing hand, Fiona bitterly notes that every other child at the table was born from the Countess. She alone is the illegitimate one. She knows they all want the useless bastard to go in their place, even though she's only 13. Suddenly, Caindel grabs Fiona's hand, raises it, and tells their father that their youngest sibling has bravely volunteered. She's just too shy to say so herself. When Fiona tries to protest, he only smirks. Count Green smiles and says he understands. Fiona would like to volunteer. Fiona, thinking bitterly, suspects he and Caindel planned this together. Caindel mocks her, calling it an honor for someone as lowly as her to represent their family. Fiona snatches her hand away. The eldest daughter agrees with Caindel, insisting that Caindel must carry on the family name. She herself is soon to be married, and Zen is about to be engaged, so naturally, Fiona should go. Fiona recalls how they all once said she didn't deserve to learn magic because she was a bastard, even locking her in the attic regularly. Thankfully, she had still learned the basics. She tries to speak, but their hostile glares silence her. She reflects that she never had a choice. No one in the manor supports her. She was just a background character. In the original novel, Fiona was only mentioned as a mistreated, illegitimate child. Eventually, Fiona says she will go. She reasons that even if she took revenge and killed them all, she'd only end up in prison. So, if she must go, she'd rather make it her decision. The family praises her, saying she made the right choice and that raising her was finally worth it. Fiona, however, silently realizes this was the reason they invited her to dinner. Normally, she'd be locked in the attic like an animal. She doesn't recall feeling this sad even when she first entered Fiona's body a year ago. She wonders if the original Fiona, never loved, always alone, felt this same sadness and resentment, which eventually led her to make terrible, irreversible choices. But unlike the original, the current Fiona doesn't hate any of them. After all, this world is one she created herself. After being cast out by her family, Fiona arrives in the war-torn north, now under the rule of the infamous Duke Abel Heylon. As she walks through his castle, an overwhelming aura radiates from it, and Fiona can't help but think it resembles the lair of an evil overlord. Maybe she's dug her own grave by coming here. When she is finally brought before Duke Halon, the throne room doors open to reveal him seated regally, his gaze fixed directly on her. He scoffs, having expected a capable mage, and instead sees a scrawny child. Fiona recognizes him instantly. Abel Halon, future mentor of Siegren the male lead, and a fan favorite among novel readers. But in the original story, he was only kind to the main character and his allies. Now, standing before her is a much younger version. This must be him in his prime. Fiona bows and introduces herself as Fiona Green. Turning to his aide Geron, Duke Heylon demands an explanation. Geron nervously explains that Count Green claimed he would send a mage from his direct bloodline. Furious, the Duke grits his teeth and explodes, shouting in rage that the Count dared to send this tiny little girl. He swears that once the war is over, the Green Domain will be the first to fall. Fiona, terrified, thinks, "Father, we're doomed." The strongest Duke of the North is super angry now. But she quickly realizes she has a more immediate problem. She's standing directly in front of him. Silently, she begs the Duke to please stop glaring at her. Duke Heylon approaches and demands to know why Count Green sent a child like her. He asks if there were truly no able-bodied family members available. Fiona explains, her eldest brother must carry on the family name, her elder sister is soon to be married, and her second brother is about to be engaged, so she, the youngest, was sent. Disgusted, Duke Halon scoffs that the Greens treat war like a children's game. He acknowledges her courage, but bluntly tells her to go home. They don't need children on the battlefield. Fiona, stunned, thinks to herself that he doesn't realize she has no home to return to. In the original story, Fiona had no knowledge of her magical talent and was abandoned by both the Green and Halon families, which led her down the path of villainy. But unlike that Fiona, she knows she possesses immense magical ability. Determined, Fiona asks the Duke to wait. She refuses to obey his order. She thinks it would be smarter to prove her worth and earn a name for herself than be tossed aside again. Once the male lead appears, the war will settle. All she has to do is survive, save money, and eventually escape to a peaceful countryside life. Fiona boldly tells Duke Halon she's not asking him to let her stay out of pity. She's asking for a chance to prove herself. He mocks her, asking if she intends to do housework. Fiona replies no, she wants to fight on the battlefield as a mage and show him she can help in the war. Abel and Geron stare wide-eyed at Fiona, after her bold declaration. Duke Halon falls silent, and Fiona begins to worry what if he lashes out and calls her an impudent child. But instead, Abel gives a slight, secretive smile. Extending his hand, he tells Fiona, with a grin, that her words were the funniest thing he's heard in a while. Fiona hesitantly takes his hand, internally insisting that she isn't joking. To her surprise, Abel agrees to give her a chance, and tells her to show him what she's worth. Later, after Geron returns from escorting Fiona to her room, Duke Halon remarks that she was incredibly arrogant and audacious, wanting to prove herself of all things. When he asks for Geron's opinion, Geron admits Fiona seems clever for her age, but reminds him she's still a child. He then asks if the Duke truly intends to let her fight. Duke Halon says yes, she volunteered. He adds that in 2 days he'll send her to the second rampart. Geron is shocked. That's the most dangerous part of the front, crawling with demonic monsters. But Abel reassures him there's no need to worry, he's going with her. And if she proves useless, he'll feed her to the beasts himself. Meanwhile, Fiona reflects on how intimidating Abel is. She can't believe she's scared of a character she created. Feeling overwhelmed, she sets thoughts of war aside for now. She needs rest. Completely exhausted, she soon falls asleep. 2 days later, Fiona heads to the second rampart with Duke Halon. Along the way, he tells her it's time to prove her worth. Internally, Fiona thinks that, despite being his creator, Abel has nothing going for him besides his looks. She replies respectfully, "Yes, Your Grace." Abel asks if she's scared. Fiona answers that there's no point in being scared now, but silently admits she is. She's from the 21st century, and now she has to fight actual monsters. Still, when she thinks about Fiona's future, she knows she has no choice. Abel warns her he won't be there to protect her. She could die. Fiona responds that it doesn't matter, she's not afraid of death. What truly terrifies her is a future without hopes or dreams. Dying now would be better than letting her soul suffer for eternity. She wonders why, of all the characters she had to be reborn as Fiona, even a minor role would have been enough. When they arrive at the second rampart, chaos erupts. Demonic monsters are attacking. Abel says they arrived just in time and challenges Fiona to prove herself. Desperate to be useful, Fiona decides to climb to the top of the wall to assess the battlefield firsthand. Though she had written about it in her novel, seeing it with her own eyes is completely different. Once at the top, she's stunned. Abel asks how it feels to see a battlefield for the first time, and Fiona replies, "It's terrible." But it's not the violence or horror that unsettles her. It's the crushing realization that she is the one responsible for creating all this. This wasn't what she had imagined. She never meant for things to turn out like this. Abel tells Fiona she must be scared stiff and adds that if she's realized how foolish she was, she can still turn back, but Fiona firmly refuses and begins using her magic. Internally, she reminds herself that since she created this world and its horrors, it's her responsibility to face them. Declaring that she's ready, Fiona recalls that a good mage is defined by their ability to create powerful natural phenomena using minimal magic. Efficiency is key. She feels the gentle flow of mana and for the first time taps into powerful magic through Fiona's body. All she can do now is trust in Fiona's innate talent. With precision, she summons a lightning strike from the sky and directs it at a demonic monster, successfully eliminating it. When it's over, she exhales in quiet relief. Abel chuckles in surprise at Fiona's display of power. Picking her up in his arms, he tells her she looked just like a god enacting divine retribution and admits he's never seen a mage as powerful as her. Half-jokingly, he asks if she's even human. Fiona replies that of course she is, but internally thinks, well, I'm actually the future final boss of this story. Abel casually accepts her answer, then steps up onto the top of the wall with her still in his arms. Looking down, Fiona nervously wonders if Abel plans to throw her off for not meeting his expectations. But instead, he points out that the beasts are retreating. Fiona sees that he's right, and realizes this is the first time she's truly accomplished something in this world. As she notices the soldiers below watching her, she feels embarrassed being in the Duke's arms. The soldiers cheer, praising and thanking her for saving their lives. Turning to Abel, Fiona asks if this means she passed. Abel gently sets her down, pats her head, and says welcome to Heylon, Fiona. Fiona is elated he acknowledged her. She replies that it's an honor, then realizes it's the first time he's called her by name. Even though he's always known it, he used to only call her child. Fiona quietly decides she'll get him back for that someday. A month later, at Halon Castle, the servants shower Fiona with snacks. She thanks them and reflects on her new life. The servants here call her the young prodigy mage, clearly impressed by her lightning attack at the second rampart. Since there are no other children in the castle, everyone dotes on her. Ever since Abel ordered that she be well fed, remarking that she was too small for a 10-year-old, there hasn't been a single day when her pockets weren't stuffed with snacks. Later, while on her way somewhere, Fiona runs into Geron and notices his zombie-like appearance. She immediately guesses that Abel must have overworked him again. Feeling sorry for him, she offers him some candy, which he gratefully accepts. When she asks where he's headed, Geron says there was an attack at the fourth rampart that morning, so he's going there. Fiona reflects that although the second rampart has improved since she began guarding it, other places haven't been as fortunate. Monsters have been attacking constantly day and night. She's shocked that this continues for 6 full years before the original story even begins. Fiona asks to accompany Geron just in case. He hesitates and asks if she's sure, and she cheerfully reassures him that she'll be fine. She thinks to herself that Geron probably remembers how terrified she was the first time she saw a dead monster up close. It had seemed much less frightening from a distance. Ever since then, she's clung to Abel, following him around for safety. Geron then asks her to promise not to tell Abel about this, and Fiona agrees, knowing full well that Abel dislikes it when others impose responsibilities on her. With that, Geron agrees, and Fiona happily exclaims yay. Fiona and Geron arrive at the fourth rampart, where the captain informs Geron that they're currently clearing the bodies from that morning's attack. Geron asks about the casualties. Meanwhile, Fiona surveys the battlefield, sparks flying, the stench of burning flesh thick in the air, and realizes she's grown accustomed to these horrific scenes. Determined not to just stand by, she joins the cleanup, using her magic to burn the beasts' corpses one by one. But the work feels endless. As she moves to the next body, she notices a boy about her age lying among the dead. Judging by his clothing, he doesn't appear to be a soldier. Perhaps he was a mercenary. Fiona silently prays for him to rest in peace, reflecting that while she may be an adult in a child's body, she's still alive while this boy wasn't so lucky. Then the boy stirs. Alarmed, Fiona initially fears he might be one of the undead, but quickly realizes he's still alive. She calls for help and begins pulling him out from beneath the corpses. Noticing a wound on his abdomen, she gently turns him onto his back. As he opens his eyes and regains consciousness, Fiona reassures him, telling him he's going to be okay and urging him to stay with her. When he asks who she is, Fiona thinks to herself, he's conscious enough he might actually survive. She then notices the boy has an unusually pretty face and thinks that if he were healthier, he'd be quite beautiful. She wonders what someone like him is doing on a battlefield. She's never seen him before, yet something about him feels oddly familiar. Suddenly, a monster lunges at her from behind, but the boy, despite his injuries, manages to pull her out of harm's way. Fiona realizes the monster had been aiming directly at her. Without the boy's quick action, she would have died. She had thought all the monsters had been taken care of, but it seems one slipped through. She worries his condition may have worsened from the fall, but she knows she can't carry him out of here alone. The monster attacks again, and Fiona swiftly responds with magic, taking it down. A sharp throb pulses through her head from the strain, but she brushes it off, thinking it's nothing compared to what the boy is enduring. Soldiers rush over and ask if she's all right. She tells them she's fine, then turns back to the boy, trying to wake him. As she looks at his face again, a realization hits her. The ragged, mercenary-like clothes, jet black hair, beautiful blue-gray eyes, and a face too handsome to be hidden by dirt. She finally recognizes him. He's so young, which is why she didn't realize it at first, but there's no mistaking it. This is Siegren, the male lead of her story. Fiona is confused. There's still 6 years before the actual story begins, so why has the male lead appeared already? She wonders if this is the moment he's supposed to meet Abel. But she quickly reminds herself that now isn't the time for speculation. If this boy is truly the hero destined to save the world, she can't let him die saving her. His death would mean the end of everything. Panicked, she urgently calls for a physician. 2 days later at Heylon Castle, the physician informs her that while the boy's injuries were serious, he will recover. Fiona is overjoyed at the news. Before leaving, the physician asks her to call him if needed, and she gratefully thanks him. Fiona feels relieved that she's prevented the world's destruction. Looking at Siegren now, it's hard for her to believe he'll one day be a hero praised by all. She estimates he must be around 14. She recalls that in the original novel she'd only written a few simple lines about Siegren's past, never diving into specifics. Like many male protagonists, he had a hidden birth secret. He was actually an imperial prince, the illegitimate son of the emperor. His mother, a powerless commoner, was hunted by those who saw Siegren as a threat to the throne and wanted him dead. Constantly fearing for his life, his mother tried to flee to another country with him but failed, leaving Siegren alone in the world. Siegren then fled north to Halon, the empire's farthest region, believing it would be safe from his pursuers. There he met Abel, who recognized his swordsmanship talent and took him under his wing as a mentor. That was the backstory only briefly mentioned to the female protagonist in the original story, just for character development. A tragic childhood is a pretty common trope for male leads in fantasy novels. But now that Fiona thinks about how this kid actually lived through those events, she can't help but feel deeply sorry for him. Fiona quietly apologizes to the unconscious Siegren, acknowledging how hard his life must have been. She reflects that although she had planned to leave this place when the time comes, she should at least be kind to Siegren while she's here as a form of atonement. Besides, if he's destined to kill her at the end of the story, it wouldn't hurt to befriend him just in case. Silently, she promises to take good care of him and pleads that when he grows up, he'll be nice to her and not cut off her head. Exhausted from staying up all night to watch over him, Fiona feels sleep tugging at her. She decides to take a quick nap and figure out her next steps once Siegren wakes up. When Fiona wakes up, she finds Siegren watching her. She greets him, asking if he slept well and saying it's nice to meet him. She's struck by how much more handsome he looks with his eyes open, though he also resembles a wary kitten far from the confident male lead she imagined. Siegren asks where he is and Fiona tells him he's at Halon Castle. When he asks who she is, she introduces herself as Fiona and then asks his name. He replies that he's Siegren and wonders how he's still alive. Fiona thinks he doesn't remember saving her from the monster, then realizes he must have acted on instinct just like a true male lead. She explains that she called for a physician and had him treated. Though Siegren seems surprised, Fiona is more concerned about his condition. Despite being the future hero of the story, he's still just a child. Fiona reflects on how different the real Siegren is from the fantasy she'd imagined. Seeing him so hurt, she feels deeply guilty and questions why she had to give the male protagonist such a tragic backstory. Fiona tries to check if Siegren has a fever, but he slaps her hand away and firmly tells her not to touch him. She responds by asking him to at least let her know if he's in pain, but Siegren coldly replies that it's none of her business and that he can take care of himself. In response, Fiona unexpectedly pokes his wound, causing him to yelp in pain. Amused, she thinks to herself, so much for a 14-year-old boy trying to act like Mr. Tough Guy. Siegren, confused, asks Fiona why she did that. Fiona firmly tells him that as a seriously injured patient, he needs to inform her immediately if he's in pain. Siegren retorts that he doesn't even know her. Why should he do that? And why is she helping a stranger like him? Fiona reminds him that he's saved her life. Siegren, however, denies doing any such thing. Just then, Abel suddenly bursts into the room, startling them both. He tells Fiona she's too young to be bringing men home. Fiona protests that Siegren is just a boy, but Abel insists it makes no difference. Noticing that Abel seems agitated, Fiona decides not to provoke him. She asks what brings him here, and Abel replies that he has business with the boy. Abel remarks that now a second little urchin has entered his home while he was away. Fiona figures the first urchin must be herself. She explains that Siegren was badly wounded, so she brought him here to be treated. Abel questions where Siegren is from, noting that he doesn't look like a local. Fiona realizes she never actually considered Siegren's origins when writing the story. Siegren answers that he's with the Carl mercenaries. Abel raises an eyebrow and questions whether mercenaries really hire children like him these days, which Fiona finds ironic considering Abel's own past. Fiona then whispers to Siegren that Abel is actually Duke Abel Heylon. Upon hearing this, Siegren tenses, wondering if Abel, like so many others, will try to kill him too. Noticing Siegren frowning, Fiona pokes his forehead. Siegren quickly pulls away, telling her to stop. She insists she's just trying to help him relax. Meanwhile, Abel grows increasingly agitated. Fiona, however, finds Siegren so cute, she just can't help herself. Suddenly, Abel lifts Fiona up, calling her a little brat and saying she's too young to be fooling around with boys. Fiona protests that Siegren is just a kid. She reflects that Abel has recently started picking her up like this often so much, so that people say they resemble a father and daughter, especially with their matching silver hair. Fiona then asks Abel if Siegren can stay until he recovers. Surprised, Abel notes that this is the first time she's ever asked him for something. Fiona admits she's never really felt the need to before. Though displeased, Abel agrees and says he'll prepare a room for Siegren, but only until he's better. Fiona is amazed and asks if Abel's really giving Siegren a room. Abel responds by asking if she had planned to share hers instead. Embarrassed, Siegren asks Fiona how spoiled she must be to be this clueless. Fiona thinks he already seems to hate her, despite them just meeting. She insists to herself that she's not spoiled, though Siegren doesn't need to know the full story of how she ended up at Heylon Castle. All he needs to do is grow up, fall in love with the female protagonist, and save the world. As for her, she plans to watch it all unfold like a parent watching their child grow. Later, Fiona thanks Abel and tells him she'll work harder to make it up to him. Abel gently replies that she's already doing more than enough. Fiona reflects that while Abel's tone hasn't changed, he's become noticeably gentler toward her. Though she still isn't sure whether he truly likes her, she now feels certain he won't kick her out. Meanwhile, left alone, Siegren recalls his mother, Kalia, who had worried for him until her dying breath. Her final words, "You must survive, Siegren," pierced him like a curse. After her death, he did reach a safer place just as she had wanted. But once he was out of immediate danger, survival became another struggle, finding food, staying alive. He ended up joining a band of mercenaries and took on menial tasks, which at least kept him from starving. However, they often beat him for no reason, leaving his body covered in scars. Still, he clung to life, because it was his mother's wish. Yet deep down, a painful question lingered. Why did he have to survive at all? Siegren was lonely. He wished there were at least one person in the world who needed him. He often wondered what meaning his wretched life held. Eventually, the Carl mercenaries were hired to protect Halon, a job that involved fighting demonic monsters. It was dangerous, but paid well. Siegren wasn't even given a proper weapon. He had to make do with whatever sword he could find on the battlefield. The only upside was that fighting to survive made him stronger. Then the inevitable happened. During one battle, the monsters overwhelmed them. The mercenaries were told to retreat. One of them shoved Siegren toward the monsters, sneering that if he was just going to stand there, he might as well be useful as a human shield. At that moment, his mother's words echoed in his mind. "You must survive, Siegren." Siegren did his best to stay alive. But no matter how skilled he had become, it wasn't enough. Lying on the battlefield, covered in wounds, the thought crossed his mind, is this finally the end? And a part of him felt relieved. The one thing he regretted was dying, because of a scumbag like that. If he had to die for someone, he wished it had been for someone in the same situation as him, someone weak and desperate, someone who truly needed help. He had received no help in his darkest hours, but he had wanted to be that help for someone else. Just hoping others wouldn't suffer as he did wasn't enough for him. He had wanted to act. Maybe that's the mindset that got him into this situation. Still, he held on to the hope that somewhere in the world, there was a ray of light. And if not, he wanted to be that light for someone. But now that hope seemed impossible. Then he felt it, a hand gently patting his head. The touch was so kind, so tender, it made him want to cry. When Siegren regained consciousness, he saw Fiona sleeping beside him. It was the most peaceful sight he had ever seen in his life. In the present, at the dining table, Fiona asks Siegren how his wound is and reaches out to check if it's healing. But Siegren slaps her hand away, reminding her that he told her not to touch him. Fiona reflects that as the antagonist of the story, maybe she's expecting too much. After all, she barely knows him, and all he's shared so far is his name. Still, Fiona tells Siegren that if it hurts anywhere, he must tell the physician, even if he doesn't want to tell her. Siegren responds that she's strange, and when Fiona asks why, she notices him looking at her like she's some bizarre sea creature. He questions why she's so worried about him. Does she pity him? He assumes Fiona must see him like a cat or dog she rescued in the rain. Fiona insists that's not the case and privately thinks Siegren must assume she's some young noble relative of Abel's, a sheltered girl who knows little of the real world. She wonders if he's annoyed at having to rely on someone like that. Fiona tells Siegren she didn't bring him here out of pity. When he asks what her reason was, Fiona admits to herself that, sure, part of her motivation was selfish. She hoped that befriending him would help her steer future events in her favor. But as the story's author, she also genuinely cares for Siegren. She tells him simply that she just wanted to save him. Siegren, confused, says she doesn't even know him, so why? Fiona replies that maybe that's true, but surely he's felt that way towards someone before. Siegren denies it. He claims only spoiled little brats like her would have such sentimental thoughts. Fiona, frustrated, realizes he's really trying to provoke her. She wants him to know she's not some pampered, noble girl. She fought on the battlefield too. She tells Siegren that she doesn't just live here. Just then, there's a knock at the door, and her intention to clear up Siegren's misunderstanding is interrupted. Fiona opens it and politely asks the physician to come in. The physician greets Fiona warmly, saying it's nice to see her again, and remarks that she already seems to have become good friends with the boy, probably because they're close in age. Siegren then tells Fiona she can leave, but she insists on staying to make sure his wounds are healing properly. Siegren warns her not to faint when she sees his scars. Fiona reassures him not to worry. Internally, she thinks she's already seen plenty of mutilated corpses on the battlefield, so this won't faze her. Still, Siegren insists she leave, explaining that the bandages need to be changed and he can't do that with her in the room. A bit exasperated, Fiona agrees and steps out. Outside, she reflects that he must have been embarrassed to undress in front of her, and thinking about it, she finds that kind of cute. She decides to return a little later. Meanwhile, inside, the physician examines Siegren's wounds and asks if he experienced much pain during the night. Siegren calmly replies that he was fine. A little later, Fiona returns, but the door is still closed and everything is quiet. She mutters to herself that it's taking longer than expected. She hadn't thought replacing bandages would take this long. Fiona had hoped to pick up where they left off in their earlier conversation and tell Siegren that she works just as hard as everyone else here. She wonders why Siegren seems to dislike her so much. Honestly, she'd never thought much about Siegren's childhood personality, which now makes him hard to understand. The original novel was told from the perspective of the female protagonist, Eunice, and in that story, Siegren's role was quite simple, handsome, kind, and deeply devoted. He was the ideal romantic partner, the kind of man who only had eyes for the heroine. Fiona thinks anyone would dream of being loved by someone like that, someone who'd always believe in them and take their side no matter what. That was the version of Siegren Fiona had always imagined. So, now she's at a loss. Maybe it's because of her slightly selfish motives. She wanted to befriend him out of guilt, affection, and a touch of calculated planning. But from Siegren's perspective, her kindness seems baseless and suspicious. If she tries to get too close, he might end up resenting her even more, and that could jeopardize everything she's trying to change about the future. Just then, the physician exits the room and finds Fiona standing there. She asks if he's finished, and he confirms that he is, but his concerned expression prompts her to ask if something's wrong. The physician reassures her that Siegren's wounds are healing well but hesitates. When pressed, he reveals that Siegren had been part of a band of mercenaries and implies it might not be safe for him to return. Though Siegren won't talk about it, his body is covered in old scars. Alarmed, Fiona bursts into the room, calling Siegren's name in worry. She's shocked. She had no idea it was this bad, and wonders to herself what she's done. When Siegren asks what's wrong, Fiona sits beside him. She suddenly grabs his shirt and apologetically asks if she can lift it for a moment. Startled, Siegren demands to know what she's doing, but Fiona insists it'll only take a second and starts to lift his shirt despite his protests. As her hand brushes against his skin, she feels bumps and deep scars, like carvings etched into him. When she finally lifts the shirt, she sees far more than she expected. His body is riddled with scars, far worse than she'd imagined. Horrified, she silently wonders how this could have happened. Angry and shaken, Siegren shoves her away, yelling that he told her to stop. Fiona falls to the floor from the force of the push. Startled and alarmed by what he's done, Siegren gasps, thinking to himself that he hadn't meant to push her that hard. Siegren, trying to brush off the tension, nervously remarks that she must be made of air. She's as light as a feather. But to his surprise, tears suddenly begin to fall down Fiona's face. Worried, Siegren rushes to her side and anxiously asks if she's hurt. He pleads with her to stop crying and tell him what's wrong, whether it's her shoulder, her leg, anything. He gets up saying they should call the physician, but Fiona grabs his shirt and stops him. She says she's fine. Internally, Fiona reflects on the scars she saw, across Siegren's chest, arms, sides, along with the purple bruises. These weren't just battle wounds, they were scars from burns and brutal beatings, created through repeated acts of cruelty. She gently asks Siegren who gave him those scars. He responds sharply, asking if the physician told her. Is that why she tried to take off his shirt? To see them for herself? Fiona admits yes, that's true. Siegren scoffs and asks if that's why she's crying now. This, he says, is exactly why he told her to stay outside. He asks her what she's crying for. Wasn't she the one who wanted to see them? He coldly remarks that she really does whatever she pleases. Suddenly, Fiona hugs him. As she does, she notices he smells of disinfectant, and even that makes her feel guilty. She blames herself for all the suffering he's endured. All because of that one line in the story, he had an unfortunate childhood. That simple sentence led to such a cruel, unforgiving life for him. Fiona asks how it all happened. Siegren brushes it off, saying it's nothing. Many mercenaries are thugs, and since he was the youngest and weakest, he was an easy target. But Fiona tells him not to call it nothing. Siegren retorts, asking if she's pitying him. But Fiona knows it's not pity, it's guilt. Until now, she never truly understood what Siegren had gone through or what it meant to live in this world. She remembers feeling similarly when she first witnessed the horrors of battle. Everything felt distant, like it belonged to another reality. Or maybe she had simply been avoiding it altogether. But seeing Siegren's scars made it real. She now realizes she's partly responsible for all the violence and pain he suffered. And here she was complaining about how hard it was to get close to him. She feels deeply ashamed. From now on, Fiona vows to stay by Siegren's side and support him, whether he wants her to or not. It's the least she can do to atone for the lasting scars he's been forced to carry. Fiona apologizes to Siegren, and he asks if she's apologizing for trying to take off his shirt. She quickly clarifies that she's not. Siegren gently pats her head and tells her not to cry. She wasn't the one who got scarred, so why is she crying? Despite his gruff tone, Fiona notes how kind and gentle his touch is. She thinks to herself that Siegren really is a kind boy. She then holds his face, prompting him to ask, "What now?" Fiona thinks she should speak as if casting a spell. She knows his emotional wounds won't truly heal until he meets the female protagonist, but until then she wants to protect him. Her small wish is for him to stop being so wary of her. She tells Siegren, "I will never hurt you. So let's be friends." Siegren's eyes widen at her words, but he plays it cool, teasing that she's crying one moment and laughing the next. She really does whatever she wants. Still, Fiona senses he's starting to warm up to her. She promises him sincerely she'll be a good friend.